Hi, I am Ion, and I'd like to tell you how you can use maths to win at Monopoly. I did this analysis so that I could defeat my dad, and I'm sure you also want to win against your opponents too. So here's the way to do that. This is the Monopoly board here in London. This figure shows you the most likely totals you get by throwing two die. As you can see, the most likely sums are 6, 7 and 8 because a larger number of combinations of the die add up to these numbers. The most landed on square is jail. You can land on jail, you can land on the go to jail square, and you can get a community chest or chance card that sends you there. From jail, you are most likely to get 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9. 7 is a community chest, and 6, 8 and 9 are Bow Street and Melrose Street and Vine Street. You may be thinking that then these are the best properties to buy, but you're not quite right. More maths is needed to fully conquer Monopoly. Here is a list of all the properties on the Monopoly board, the cost of buying them, and the rent that you get when an opponent lands on the property, and therefore you can calculate the return on your investment for each property. Continuing along the board clockwise from go, we see that the properties have actually been placed in order of increasing costs and returns. Here is the final page of the list. So the rent to cost ratio, or the attractiveness of buying a property, varies quite a bit, from 3% to 12% at this stage. We also see that while buying one station is pretty lucrative, having more stations is very profitable. Similarly, utilities on average are profitable, even though sometimes you may not get much for them, as what you get depends on the sum of the die rolled by the opponent. I therefore have a range here for the rent and an average that accurately represents the rent. If you can buy a house, for example, if you have Euston Road, houses cost 50 and your rent increases by 24. So if someone lands on your house twice, then you would have made up the price of buying the house easily. Taking this to the next level, 2 houses are even better. So buy as many houses as possible. Quick tip, if buying houses for light blue, for example, then always put your first house on the most expensive property. Houses cost the same for every property of the same color. To get all the properties of one color, you may want to buy it from another player for a decided price. Here is a table of profit analysis with a hotel. Near the end of long games, you may have a hotel on one of your properties. As you can see, Mayfair with a hotel is great. If someone lands on it just once, you make up the cost of both Mayfair, Park Lane and the cost of the hotel. Green, however, is not so good. The rankings are dark blue and light blue, very close together, then brown and orange and magenta. Then there's a slight gap, and then there's yellow, red, and another gap, and then green. First, I used a computer program to show the probability of landing on each of the properties. Here is the table of the results. The probability of landing on orange is considerably high, but landing on brown or dark blue is low probability. Also, the utilities and stations have surprisingly high probability. The very high probability of landing makes orange the best to invest in. The medium probability of landing, but high cost, makes green the worst to invest in. Light blue is the second best investment because of its great rent to cost ratio after building a hotel. Dark blue ties with magenta, even though dark blue has the highest profitability. They were followed closely by red because of its high probability of landing. Additionally, I recommend buying stations and utilities. Some questions I was asked. If your opponent gets Mayfair and Park Lane, does that mean that you lose? your opponent has got very lucky. He has got the most attractive cards as per rent to cost for the loan cards as well as with hotels. But if you can get your hands on the orange, light blue or magenta sets, you have a good chance of winning. If you start last, is that a disadvantage? It seems like you will be following behind him, with his chance of falling on the properties that he or she has just bought. There is a small chance of this, but if you get ahead of him, then he can land on your properties. It now looks like that over a very long game, these small advantages and disadvantages will even out. Should you put all your houses on one property of a colour, or spread them out across the different properties of the colour? Remember my advice to put your first house on the more expensive property of a colour group. So taking this advice, what would happen if you put a hotel on Pentonville Road, the more expensive of the light blue properties, and no houses on any of the others? The hotel on Pentonville Road would give you a rent of $600 for an investment of $250. For the same investment, you could have put 2 houses on Pentonville, 2 on Euston, and for 1 on Angel in Islington. This would give you about 3 times better probability of landing. So for one person landing on Pentonville, in the second scenario, one person would land once on each of the properties. So for the same investment of $250, you would earn a rent of $100 plus $90 plus $30, which is only $220. So having one hotel on Pentonville Road is much better than having houses distributed between the colour locations. Keep putting houses on the most expensive property of a set. This was my first video on how to win at board games using maths. If you like it, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.